Mandisi, thank you for joining us this morning. How did this project fit into the strategic mandate of the ECIC? The ECIC being an agency of the Departments of Trade, Industry and Competition.
I think, as you may know, ECIC's mandate is to facilitate export trade and cross-border investments. We can do this anywhere in the world, but we have a strategic focus on the African continent. So Zimbabwe, country next door to us, this transaction represents a landmark transaction for the region. So it will present opportunities for us to support our exporters, to export to the project. We have a key player here being a South African contractor, Raubex. So for the portion of the works they do and the loan that is financed by South African banks, 50% of that loan will be used to purchase goods and services from South Africa. And that will enable job creation in South Africa, which is the mandate which we seek to fulfill. So that aligns really with the strategic intent of the organization. And then with the participation of the institutional investors in the project, then it also aligns with our mandate to support cross-border investments.
And Mandisi, what was the tangible support and facilitation that the ECIC actually brought to the project?
I think we provide political risk insurance for 100% to the banks, and commercial risk insurance up to 95%. I think with this sort of coverage, as one knows that the risk perceptions in Zimbabwe are quite high. So through this support which we provide to the banks, we are enabled to crowd in banks then to provide long-term liquidity to the project.
Without a doubt, this was a highly structured, complex project financing. Up to $300 million project financing costs. How did the ECIC evaluate the risk matrix and become comfortable with that, to be the lender of last resort, to step in and help the commercial banks facilitate their credit approvals to participate in this transaction?
I think the interesting element about the project is that the Beitbridge border post is an existing border post. So there's history in terms of traffic that goes through the border. That gives a good baseline in terms of the traffic and the revenues that are likely to be generated by the project. Obviously, with the rehabilitation, we expect more efficiencies, and that will attract even more traffic. And so robust studies have been done to sensitize the model and evaluate, the negative downside potential for the revenue streams. But on the whole, we got comfortable that there's sufficient traffic even under stressed scenarios. Secondly, the other key area is about currency risk for the project. We know that there's shortage of dollars generally in Zimbabwe, but the way the project has been structured is that the government of Zimbabwe has agreed to a framework where the toll fees can be collected outside of the country. So there's offshore revenue structures and accounts where the project can be collected, and that way the risk is externalized out of Zimbabwe. So that gave us some degree of comfort as well.
Okay. You're absolutely right. It's a landmark transaction, and it's actually so real. It's on our doorstep. We all know people that cross the border. We all know of logistics companies, transport companies. That particular border post is an arterial trade route, not only into Zimbabwe, but then further north to Malawi, DRC, Zambia. Tell me, what do you think the impact of this rehabilitation project will be on the region?
No, you're right. This is quite a landmark deal. The Beitbridge border post is the busiest border post between South Africa and Zimbabwe and linking up with Zambia and the DRC. So it's quite strategic to the movement of goods and people. And I think with the private sector player that will be managing the port facilities, we expect that with the introduction of technology, there will be efficiencies. With the project, the border post itself has been experiencing long delays for the big traffic. I mean, for the haulage trucks. I think these are the key ones that are moving a large amount of goods. So with the efficiencies that will come through, then it will speed up the movement of goods through the border.
Oh, brilliant. And Mandisi, in terms of job creation, both here in South Africa and then across the border in Zimbabwe?
I think with the SA content requirement that we insist on as ECIC, for instance, on the debt side, we're supporting a debt amount of $135 million US. So 50% of that must be used to purchase goods and services from South Africa. So in that sense, then we export a lot, we expect a high level of employment to be generated by this project in South Africa, but also in the local economy as well, because during the operational phase of the project, Zimbabwean employees will be employed by the project.
So truly an authentic regional project that will benefit both countries.
Definitely, I think even the entire region, it goes beyond just South Africa and Zimbabwe. As I've mentioned, Zambia, DRC. So for the whole region, also it's happening at a time of, there's a promotion of intra-Africa trade. So this is a prime example of the kind of project, infrastructure project that will unleash and improve the level of intra-Africa trade.
That's a very good point, Mandisi. I wanted to ask, there was a participation by some African DFIs in this particular project, including the Emerging Africa Infrastructure Fund and Afri-Exim Bank. Does ECIC work with the DFIs on the continent to promote these sorts of projects?
Yeah, we do. Especially we have a specific strategic partnership with Afri-Exim Bank. So it's quite a positive thing that they'll be co-financing alongside the SA banks, which we are supporting. I think in that way, they will ensure that the project is fully funded. You can imagine it's difficult to raise large capital amounts for a Zimbabwean project. So they'll also support us in risk sharing. You know, there's political risk obviously involved in such a project.
Okay. And Mandisi, lastly, landmark strategic project on our doorstep, highly complex, highly structured. The ECIC worked with the 4 big commercial banks in South Africa to facilitate it and bring the project over the line. How can you use this as a model for other infrastructure projects, particularly rail and port projects on the continent going forward? How can the ECIC work with the commercial banks to facilitate these types of projects in the future?
I think for ECIC, what we call the SA Inc. approach is quite important, which essentially talks to the collaboration between public and private sector players in bringing their value add together and pool their resources to enable financing of big infrastructure projects. I think in this case, the banks bring their liquidity and we bring our risk appetite for political risk into the equation.